Hello guys and welcome to my new video. Today we're looking at Evoker or Preservation Evoker, the new healing class in Dragonflight, and this is the first time I actually got to spend a little time playing this class because I've been away, I've been sick, and honestly this video is going to focus on the fun aspect. Is this class or a healer fun to play, and could this be my new main in Dragonflight? Because let's be honest, the talents can change, the spell coefficients and all those things can change in alpha and beta and all those things, but is this a healer that provides me or possibly you with a lot of fun? Let's go and have a look at what makes Evoker different from every other healer. I feel there are a couple of aspects that make Evoker very different from a lot of the other healers. Now keep in mind, when I say different from other healers, Evoker is honestly a combination of multiple different healing classes. For example, a lot of people might say that the mobility resembles DH or Demon Hunter. You have things like Glide, you're a very mobile class, you almost look like a Demon Hunter to some extent. And you also have different aspects from healers like Mistweaver Monks, from Resto Druids, from Resto Shaman. There's a lot of the talents that Evoker has that resembles Cloudburst Totem. And one of the things that makes Evoker different is obviously the empowered spells. This is one of the biggest things that Blizzard has revealed in terms of new way of dealing damage or healing. You're basically holding on to these abilities, and the longer you hold on to them, the more powerful they are, and you can do the double tap method. It's available in the general settings. These spells are going to be very different from anything else that you've seen so far. It's completely new in World of Warcraft, and honestly, they do require a certain amount of knowledge because you cannot cast them on the move. You do have an ability that almost gives you Spirit Walker's Grace where you can cast heals while moving, but your empowered spells can only be cast when you're stationary. So if you spend a long time casting these spells, you need to know if that's going to hit enemies or if it's going to heal allies. So positioning is very, very important. Another thing that makes Evoker special is the fact that most of your abilities have 25-yard range, which is very small compared to 40 yards that all the other healers have. So this is a big deal. A lot of people might be like, 25-yard range, that's not that big, it's not going to define a class. It absolutely does define this class. The fact that you have to pay close attention to your positioning, because if you don't stay between melee and ranged, you're not going to be able to heal both camps in like raid situations in 5-man dungeons. All of a sudden there's going to be fights. I can already see fights in 5-man dungeons where people are spread and you can only heal one person at a time because everyone's so far away, and you have to make sure to use your movement abilities in such a way that you're going to optimize your healing. And there is going to be ways to optimize your healing through other abilities. I'll talk about it later on, but positioning is absolutely huge. And I think this is going to be one of those things that people are either gonna hate it or some people are gonna love it, with the fact that you have to really pay attention. There's a reason why this class is called Advanced. And believe me, from all the testing that I've done so far, I believe this class could be one of the hardest healers to play in the game right now. And on top of that, you have different resource generation. You have essences, certain spells cost essences, certain spells cost mana, and you have different ways of managing this, which actually creates a very distinct playstyle because you don't have a lot of spammable heals. You have Living Flame, which allows you to deal damage or healing depending on which target you cast it on, and that is basically your only one spammable ability. All of the other abilities have essence cost associated with them, which means you cannot spam them, or they have a cooldown. If you're playing Evoker for the first time and you're approaching a situation where there's a lot of AoE damage happening, you might be like, okay, I've just used this ability, it's on cooldown, I can't spam this, and you might be lost to some extent. So being able to anticipate damage and being able to build your burst healing is very, very important. And this is why I say Evoker is going to be a pretty difficult class to pick up, but it might be very, very rewarding. And besides that, we have to talk about Echo. This ability or this heal is going to create so many different synergies. So you can see my Evoker right here, and this Echo talent is going to be insane because it creates so many different synergies. So Echo wraps an ally with temporal energy healing for a certain amount and causing your next non-Echo healing spell to cast an additional time an ally at 100% normal healing. It's only 100% because I went with this talent build. You don't have to. This is going to be the bronze talent build, which I feel is going to be, or at least the bronze style might be interesting in 5-mans, the green style might be interesting in raids, but let's not talk about that. So if you're playing a Mistweaver Monk, you use your Renewing Mist, then you cast your Vivify, and your Vivify splashes on people that have Renewing Mist. If you're playing Resto Shaman, Primordial Wave, you cast Riptides, you cast Primordial Wave, then you cast Healing Wave, and Healing Wave splashes on people that have Riptide. It has a similar concept to this, but it's far more open because it affects all of your non-healing or non-echo abilities. So just to showcase it, because I was very confused at the start. So this person here, I'm going to use my echo ability. It has a cast time and it costs essences. And that's one of the 2 abilities that cost essences. Again, I'm not talking about Disintegrate, which is your DPS ability. We're not going to talk about that, but this is one of your 2 healing abilities that cost essences. So I'm going to cast Echo, and then I'm going to cast an ability called Dream Breath, which is basically your empowered ability, which is going to heal people. The longer you hold this ability, the more powerful it's going to be. I'm not going to heal this person with Dream Breath. So I'm going to cast Echo, and I'm casting my Dream Breath. I'm not going to hit my Dream Breath on this target, but the person with Echo is also going to get healed. So this is also, to some extent, like atonements from Discipline Priest. And all of a sudden, this Echo and the way that it synergizes with all of your healing abilities creates a really interesting playstyle that basically makes Evoker an Evoker. So first things first, let's talk about Evoker and the utility that it provides. Straight away, Evokers have things like Blessing of Bronze, which reduces the cooldown of a major movement ability for all party and raid members by 15% for 1 hour. There's a lot of movement associated with this class. You have a lot of talents that also provide you with movement abilities for party. And Zephyr is a really cool ability, but only for party, 2-minute cooldown, lift up party members, so that means party members within 25 yards into area, reducing damage taken from area effect attacks by 20% and increasing movement speed by 30% for 8 seconds. This feels pretty powerful. It's only party members, but it's only in the class tree, it's not in the spec tree itself. There is a lot of movement associated with this class. You have abilities like Hover, which you can have 2 charges of. It provides, again, this is also like a pseudo Spirit Walker's Grace where you can cast heals. You cannot cast your empowered abilities, but you can see what I'm talking about. There's a lot of movement to this class. This is if you enjoy a healer that can go really fast from A to B, this is one of those classes. And it's very important for this class to have movement because your range is so limited. Outside of that, you have to know that there's 2 abilities that are going to cost essences. You can see essences here right now. They basically regenerate on average 1 every 5 seconds. There are talents that increase energy regeneration and things like that. But this is very important because these essences are going to tie into whether you're going to spend those essences on Echo or you're going to spend them on things like Emerald Blossom. So Echo, we talked about it. It's basically a heal that you can place it on targets, and then your next healing ability is going to be replicated onto them. And it creates an insane playstyle, and I can already tell you in 5-man dungeons, this is probably going to be something very important because it's hard to... It doesn't have a positioning requirement. Another ability that costs essences, and you're going to decide whether you're going to use this ability, is going to be Emerald Bloom. And you can cast it on allies, and it creates this like circle and then explodes and heals people. And it can be both through talents, and it can be made a lot stronger. But straight away, this ability has positioning requirement associated with it, which makes it, in my opinion, a lot more difficult to use in 5-man situations. This is why I feel Bronze build, Echo build is going to be something that's going to be quite potent in Mythic Plus, and Emerald Blossoms is probably going to be something that's going to be very interesting in raid situations because there's a bunch of talents. These talents right here and this Circle of Life. Circle of Life, if you read it right now, it actually has a Cloudburst component associated with it to some extent. But you can see where I'm going with this. You have 2 abilities that have essences or essence costs associated with it, and you basically make a build around which ability you're going to use. If you're going to use Echo, you're probably going to spec into things like Time Lord. Echo replicates 30% additional healing. If you're not going to use Echo, you might spec into Fluttering Seedlings, Field of Dreams. So you decide on what spell you want to focus on, bronze or green, and you go for that path. Now looking at your basic healing rotation in terms of how to ramp, I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis with Echo in terms of setting up for a ramp, because there is going to be ways of setting up for a ramp and holding on to charges, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But generally speaking, you can only really have 2 or 3 Echoes out at a given time because, again, it costs 2 essences, and your essences take a while to regenerate. So you're not going to be able to spread your Echoes that often. There are rules to the exception in terms of different talents, we'll talk about it, but that's the general consensus. You apply Echoes on a couple of people, and if the party needs a lot of AoE healing, especially in 5-man situations, I can tell you, Spirit Bloom is going to be... It's extremely strong right now in 5-man dungeons because it heals for a lot, and it synergizes a lot with Echoes, and it's basically, you can see me right now casting Spirit Bloom. It doesn't have a telegraphed ability. It feels to me like... If you're playing a Mystery or Monk right now, if you're casting Essence Font, it feels like an Essence Font, but it doesn't do healing during channel. It only does healing after a channel. So you just hold on to it, and then you press it, and it's going to cast. And it's going to, the longer you hold on to it, the more allies are going to be healed by this. And this ability is extremely potent when combined with Echoes. Get a couple of Echoes out there, press Spirit Bloom and all of a sudden your party's probably going to be full HP depending on how many people got hit. This is very, very strong. Unfortunately, it can have a long cooldown. You can't spec into shorter cooldown, or Spirit Bloom increases your essence regeneration. I don't know which is going to be one that's going to be stronger, but this is something that I went in right now. Now, if you have this ability on cooldown and you need to do a lot of AoE healing and people are just dying and all of that, you can spread your echoes and use an ability called Rescue. This is another ability that has a lot of synergies in terms of the talent builds. There's a lot of talent builds like Live Bind and Call of Ysera that synergize with Rescue, and I feel Rescue is going to be one of the core abilities you should play around with. So what happens is that if you have, let's say for example, if I have Echo on myself, you can see it right now, you can see Echo here, and I use Rescue, this is going to heal the person, and it's going to proc my Echo on me as well, depending on which targets you have Echo on. And this Rescue ability, it's basically, if you play Overwatch Mercy, you'll be very familiar with this. It brings it to the closer to the target, and it heals them for quite a bit. And I talked about the fact that it has a lot of synergy with talents. This ability, at the start, I thought it was going to be just a movement ability. You don't have to pay attention to it. This is actually quite big. The healing that it provides is quite strong, especially when paired with Echoes. If you have your Spirit Bloom on cooldown, for example, this is probably going to be your go-to ability if someone's about to die or if you need AoE healing. Depending on what, maybe in Mythic Plus, depending on which talent build you're on, but it's going to be an ability that's going to be important. Now, a lot of people might hate this, or they might like it. If you use this with Echo, the healing is going to be pretty strong, and it's also a gap closer. You only have 25-yard range healing. So if everyone's here and you can't reach them, or the whole group is right here and you can't really reach them, you can use your Rescue to get close to them and then heal all the other people outside of it. On top of that, Rescue also heals for quite a bit. So this ability is going to be, or it's looking to be like one of your core abilities as Evoker, but I'm not completely sold on it. I don't hate this, I don't love it. I might actually try it out a bit longer. Now let's talk about your other healing abilities, maybe raid abilities that you might be using a lot more, possible builds. Now you have a lot of cooldowns in terms of, depending on how you're going to spec into it, typical scales, compresses time to make your next empowered spell instant. And again, this is, a lot of your empowered abilities, they have a long cast time. Like, you're gonna spend a long time casting it. Typical scales, you press it instantly and then it heals straight away. So that's kind of cool. You also have Rewind, which rewinds 50% of the damage taken in the last 5 seconds. So if there was a lot of damage taken in the last 5 seconds, this could be insanely strong. This is going to be fun to play around, and I think it's an interesting ability. There's a lot of ways to improve it through talents and things like that. And outside of that, you have abilities, like I already used it, you have Dream Breath. Now I think Dream Breath is one of those abilities that in 5-mans, it feels relatively awkward to use, because again, you can't cast it on the move. It's relatively awkward to use, and it feels a lot stronger if you get to hit every single party member with it, but again, it's kind of awkward. I think it's going to be a lot more usable in raid situations, or for example, maybe you're doing a 5-man dungeon and you already use your Spirit Bloom, you already used your Rescue, and everyone's still taking AoE damage, you might use this. But again, relatively awkward to use in 5-mans, possibly very strong in raids, because again, it's a lot easier to hit everyone with it. And then you have your Emerald Blossom. We talked about Emerald Blossom, we talked about this ability. Like, you can use it on allies. And the reason I said that I might not use this in 5-mans, because it does have a positioning requirement to it. Now, in raid situations, it might be very different, because you can spec into it and empower it through so many different ways. And I think it's going to be very, very fun to try and play this in like raid situations. I'll try it out in 5-mans and see how it goes. But another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I think it's going to be very important, I can't really showcase all these abilities, but Stasis. Stasis causes your next 3 helpful spells to be duplicated and stored in a time lock. You may reactivate Stasis anytime within 30 seconds to quickly unleash their magic. So this is like pseudo Cloudburst Totem on steroids, 1.5 minute cooldowns. But just to showcase how fun it can be, because it actually remembers the positioning. So I use Stasis right now. Again, you can replicate Echoes, which could be very interesting to set up for a huge burst. You can see it right now, I have Stasis. There's no time limitation on this. But just to showcase how cool it could, visually cool. So I'm going to use Emerald Blossom on this person. I copied this ability. I'm going to use Emerald Blossom on this person. It copied that ability. And then I'm going to use Emerald Blossom on myself. And then I'm going to use Stasis just to showcase the positioning. So I use Emerald Blossom on myself here. Now you can see the 3 abilities. You can see the Stasis. 3 abilities have been stored. And then I'm going to activate Stasis. And it's going to cast these abilities again on the members. So you can see how cool it is. Visually, it's very, very pleasing. I'm not sure what the best way is going to be for setting up bursts. It might be something like copying your echoes, and then you can have loads of echoes out in the raid. So there's going to be a lot of different ways to cheese or optimize this ability, because let's be honest, there's a lot of ways to optimize Cloudburst, and this is Cloudburst on steroids. So you can see where I'm coming from when I say that this class in general is somewhat technically difficult. A lot of your abilities have cooldowns. Spirit Bloom has a cooldown. Dream Breath has a cooldown. Echoes has, technically, you cannot spam Echoes because it costs essences. So the only thing that you can actually spam in situations when all of your abilities are on cooldown is going to be Living Flame. And Living Flame can be used to heal or DPS, and that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of damaging, I think there's a lot of damaging options for Evoker, but I think an ability Leaping Flames is pretty strong right now. I don't know if it's going to be the best way, but Fire Breath causes your next Living Flame to strike one additional target per empowered level, which means that if I cast, this is your DPS ability. This deals so much damage. I think it's broken right now. I haven't tested it, but you can use Fire Breath, and then afterwards you can use your Living Flame to splash DPS on so many targets, or even splash heal as well. So this feels like a very interesting, this already feels like a really nice DPS rotation that I've been using in 5-man dungeons. You use your Fire Breath, and then you use your Living Flame, and that's gonna do a lot of splash healing and damage depending on the targets and things like that. So it is very, very cool. On top of that, Fire Breath, there's a lot of abilities. So there's, how do I say, this is one of those healers that if you DPS, you get benefit out of it, depending on if you spec into the right talents. Because Fire Breath can actually deal healing as well. Fire Breath heals an injured ally for 80% of damage done. So there is a reason for you to use this ability besides damage. There's also abilities like Azure Strike has a 15% chance to cause an Essence Burst, making your next Essence ability free. So Azure Strike is something that you have right here. It projects energy onto 2 enemies, and you can also have an ability that also slows them. So you can cast this, and it also has a chance of giving you, let's see if you can actually have it. It has a chance of giving you a free cast of Essence ability. So this is very similar to something like Surge of Light for Holy Priest or something like that. It has a similar animation as well. So that means my next Echo or my next Emerald Blossom is going to be free. So depending if you're going the bronze build, or depending if you're going the green build, you're going to cast that ability associated with that. So let's look at a possible burst healing rotation or potential that you could have. Now, in terms of the talents, I don't think you have to pick Essence Strike, but it's important to pick something like this. Living Flame has a 20% chance to make your next Essence ability free, which basically does what Essence Strike does for Azure Strike. But because of our synergy with Leaping Flames, I can use my Fire Breath. I cast my Fire Breath, then I use my Living Flames. Living Flame casts on a bunch of targets, and now it actually procced double Essence Burst. So now I can use Echoes on this target, I can use Echoes on this target, I can use Echoes on this target, I can use Echoes on this, I can use Echoes on this, I can use Echoes on all of these members, and then I can cast something like my Spirit Bloom, and the amount of healing that I'm doing is insane. So this might be like a pseudo burst rotation or something that you could prep for if possible. Again, it is random and it's not always guaranteed to happen, but this is one of the ways of generating more essences or generating more echoes, and then your healing abilities are gonna proc echoes, and all of a sudden you're just bursting. Now, there's a lot of things that I didn't include in this video in terms of the abilities you have. You have a hot reversion, which the duration is increased if it critically heals. To some extent, you can almost consider this like a Riptide, but you can use echoes and you can replicate the reversion if you need to. You have a very solid tank defensive, and you can actually build it, and it's very similar to if you play a Brewmaster Monk. If you're looking at stagger, this is almost giving you stagger to other tanks or other members, and it can be very situationally strong. I think it's very nice to use. You have, again, things like to deal damage and provides you with movement. Things like, you can use Recall to go back to where you were. Things like Deep Breath. I didn't showcase the last abilities in terms of Dreamflight. You can use, or you can have talents which provides these abilities with a stun, which makes it really interesting in 5-man situations. You have so many different utility through your racials, defensives. You have a really strong Dispel on a minute cooldown, which cauterizes an ally wounds, removing all bleeds, poison, and curses and disease effects. Like, there's so many different things that this class has, and it almost has an ability for any situation. I can tell you right now, this class has so many different abilities, and if you're doing high-end mythic raiding or high-end mythic plus pushing, you're going to be a member of a group that is going to be responsible for a lot of different things. You have a pseudo mass AoE enrage dispel if you use it properly. You can empower your CC abilities. There's just so many different things to optimize this class. It is difficult to play. I can tell you right now, this might be one of the more difficult classes to play in World of Warcraft, because for a lot of new beginners, if something bad is happening, they like to have abilities that are spammable, and you don't really have that. You have to, when approaching content, you have to know when AoE damage is going to happen and prepare for AoE damage. Your range limitations are absolutely huge. The fact that you only have a 25-yard range on a lot of your heals is so big. Believe me, once everyone gets to try out this class, you will be aware, or you're either gonna love it or absolutely hate it. But the fact that you have lower range or shorter range, you have so many healing abilities or so many movement abilities to kind of battle that. And you need to optimize your movement abilities, things like rescue, which can also heal targets and also replicate on echo targets, which is a really strong heal if you don't have your spirit bloom. We talked about this. This class gets overly complicated when you combine it with something like stasis. We talked about stasis ability in terms of how to use the ability in raids and mythic plus, and there's probably going to be some really cheesable ways of using this. So straight away I can tell you, this class, lower range, very hard to play in terms of optimizing your heals, in terms of optimizing your burst. You should know when healing is required. You should know if there's going to be people are going to be spread out, because you need to use your movement abilities in a correct way. You do have utility abilities for almost every situation, and it is an extremely fun class to play. It is very rewarding. If you're extremely happy with being a Resto Shaman, staying in one position at the back of the raid, healing everyone and just having a good time, not having to worry about range or anything like that, this class might not be for you. This class is going to be something that's going to be darting to melee, to ranged, anticipating burst potentials, using a lot of your utility abilities, providing movement speed to your raid at the right situations. This class is going to be very rewarding, but it's also very difficult to play or optimize even at these early stages. Guys, let me know how you feel about this video. I know it is very long, but it is a new class. This is my first impression, so there's probably so many different things that I missed out on. And let me, again, there is a lot of different things that I've been testing, and I know there's a lot of things that I didn't include this video. I could make a 2-hour video about this, because Evoker just seems somewhat of a complicated class to optimize. So let me know if you're gonna main this class or if you're looking to main this, because right now this is probably one of my prime candidates for a main class in Dragonflight.